Thank you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about time as it relates to the scriptures. The Greeks had three distinct descriptions for time. One was aion, A-I-O-N, which involved from nothingness to eternity. And then they had one called chronos, which is the point in time on a timeline. 901 is a chronos. And as we get our chronology and everything else from that word. And then there was another word, Kairos. There's a missionary effort called Kairos that works in Africa, well, all over the United States. And they get that word from there. I'd like to read a quote from a man by the name of Lewis Mumford. He wrote a book in 1934 that has nothing to do with the Bible. It's more of a scientific book. But he said, the clock, not the steam engine, is the key machine of the modern industrial age. Due to the mechanical clock, timekeeping passed into time serving, time accounting, and time rationing. As this took place, eternity ceased gradually to serve as the measure and focus of human actions. From your reading, your study in school and stuff like that, what would it have been like for the caveman or early man? They obviously didn't have clocks.
Sun up to Sunday.
The sun came up and they did something, and the sun went down, and generally they didn't do anything. Were there any other distinctions based on time?
The handwriting was on the wall.
The what?
The handwriting was on the wall.
Well, yeah, at one point they said there was handwriting on the wall.
Stars.
Stars.
I was gonna say the seasons.
There would have been seasons, and there would have been, here's a little trivia. Did you know that not every hour is literally the same hour every day or even around the world? There's only 2 times during the year where a full hour is actually a full hour. You know when they are?
The equinoxes.
The equinoxes. December 21st and whenever the summer equinox is.
June 21st.
June 21st. And that is when time is closest to being exactly what it is. In the Bible, the word Kairos is used 86 times, and Chronos is only used 54 times. And so Kairos is more of a concept in the Bible than is Chronos. Now, we look at time as a commodity. It's a limited resource. There's 24 hours in a day, for sure. But have you ever heard anybody say, I need more hours in the day? Yeah. We say there's 24, but that's not enough. We need more. It's a limited resource. We struggle all the time to put things in order. We try and balance our hobbies and our church and our work and our friends and everything else. And so we're really a slave to this time thing in many ways. There are countries, and some of you, maybe if you know anybody who's been a missionary or been in other countries, there are places where church, they won't have a word for the time, like 10:15. They'll say it's mid-morning or mid-afternoon. And like it's time for a siesta, it's after lunch. And that lunch could be at 12:30, it could be at 1, but they take a siesta then. The church might start in the mid-morning. Somebody might show up just as everybody else is there. But others will come in late. Wait, we do that here. But I'm talking like an hour or two late, because in those countries, church is just church. You're going to church. And there's not a time element on it. In fact, sometimes church may start here and end here. But lots of times, if things are really going good and everybody's getting it, it'll go much longer. We have churches in the United States that'll do that too. I mean, we're pretty precise here. I mean, those of you who have worked with a worship team, you know, they tell you, if you're going to get up there and pray, you just better get up there and do it and get done. In fact, they tell you to walk up during the last verse of the song so that you don't waste any time walking up those steps, because time is important. It's a commodity that we have to have. We're convinced that time is money, and we can't waste time. We don't want to take up somebody's time. We don't want to waste their time with that. Now, if you have friends and they say, why don't we get together and do something? Then it becomes one of, well, let me see if I can find time. It's like you lost it somewhere and it's laying over there, and if I can find it, I can use it. Our whole language revolves around time, and what we do revolves around time. Efficiency. We have time management, efficiency experts and things like that to make us handle our time better. Can you think of any other ways that we are bound by time?
I was thinking about many people are paid by the hour.
Paid by the hour, or paid by the how many pieces they can get done in an hour?
Or charged by the hour.
Do any of you ever, and you can say this, I mean, do you ever find yourself with not enough time? Come on, you're a teacher. Come on. Yeah, we do. I mean, time is a factor. How important do you think time is to you? If you're sitting there saying, well, I'm wasting mine right now, sitting here. You two are retired. Now you have all the time in the world. You can do anything you want.
Time on our hands.
You got time on your hands right there.
Well, and it really is true, different seasons of your life. It seems like it's some different. I don't feel as pressed for time most times. Sometimes I do, but daily, I don't seem as pressed for time as I did when I was teaching. And I had house with kids.
There are seasons when time is more precious. There are seasons when it's not, doesn't affect you as much. And a lot of people say, man, I can't wait till I retire. I'm going to have this so much time. And it doesn't work out that way, I'm telling you. Does it? There's always something that's going to fill up your time.
Bill, I like it. The time flies when you're having fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm usually having fun. So
Yeah.
it flies pretty quick.
Is there a kind of an opposite to that? Time
Stand still.
drags when
When you're at work.
you're at work.
I'm just saying.
There are times when it seems that, like we always say, when we come back from Dallas, Fort Worth area, going from Lubbock to Sweetwater, going there is like this. Coming home from Sweetwater to Lubbock is the longest stretch of road that I've ever been on. It just seems to take forever. We can't get home quick enough.
I think about when you talk about how fast your kids grow up and everything. I've always heard the days drag, but the years fly by. And so and it's true, as you're going through it, it seems like they're never going to get out of diapers or they're never going to. But you look back and man, where'd the time go?
Anybody who's, if you're just now raising kids and are getting ready to be prepared for that, it seems to take it's real slow increments. But when you're our age, you look back and go, man, am I that old already? Where did it all go? And then you start saying, what did I do with that time? How was I productive? And most people want to say, I should make a mark. There should be a time that I make a mark. In the time that I have left, I want to make a mark in this world and known for something. Chronos is that sequential thing. But actually for most of history, Kairos was what was used at the beginning. Those cavemen, those people, they worked in seasons. They worked in special times. And we're not attuned to that as much. If I ask you when clocks were invented, would you have any idea? What would you guess?
What would the hourglass be the first one?
Clocks.
Clocks.
Clocks, okay.
From 1400s. Now, here's some irony. The monks at the time knew that they needed to pray a certain number of times a day. And they wanted to make sure they got it right because they were pious monks. And so they said, we have to find a way to let us know exactly when, or else time will get away from us. And so they started inventing clocks. And they invented the clock to remind them when to pray, which turned it from a natural thing that they did during the day to a required thing bound by that clock. And by the way, they didn't even break up that clock into seconds until the late 1600s. So all they had was just minutes. They could divide it up into 60 and then the minutes, but beyond that, they couldn't be any more precise than that. We know that we have a lot of our life scheduled looking at Chronos time. The point of this lesson is that we should be looking more at Kairos time, looking at God's time. And too often, and maybe you've done this, you go through your life and you take a moment and pause, or a sermon, or you have something that makes you stop and think, and you say, that might have been God calling me, or this might have been a God moment. We'll talk a little bit about this, I guess. Have you ever had a situation where someone came into your life and it turned out to be an amazing situation, something that changed your life? I know most of us are going to say, well, my wife. Yeah. But have you ever had an encounter with somebody that you felt urged to talk to them, or you felt an urge to bring a subject up with them or something like that? Have you ever had, I'm seeing blank faces, and as a teacher, I'm going, okay, go to the next question. A situation in your life that you would say made you more conscious and aware of God working in your life? Anybody care to share?
My first thought is the bus trip.
the bus wreck. And that certainly woke a lot of people up. It damaged a lot of people, but it woke a lot of people up to how short life can be.
9/11.
9/11 would be one. Sometimes it's easy to see the big things, but sometimes we miss the little daily things.
Well, there's always times, and I mean, I don't know for everybody, but there have been for me where, you're tight on money, you're down to your last few dollars, you're trying to make it stretch, and then you get a check in the mail, or somebody gives you a gift card or something that you weren't expecting, or, there's things like that. And that that's just God taking care of you.
That's an example. And there are times in our lives that aren't predicated on chronos. Like that wasn't somebody said, oh, it's 10 after 5, I better give her a gift card. It's not a chronos time thing. I've had several in my life. And so I know each of you have had something that shocks you, that says, this is an event that's going to shape my life in some way. This is something that is happening to me that I need to open my eyes to. And that's more of what we're getting to with the Chronos thing. I'm going to read this. An author by the name of Joan Chittister told this story about a conversation between a wise person and their disciple. And here's how the dialogue went. Where shall I look for enlightenment? The disciple asked. Here, the wise one said. When will it happen? The disciple asked. It's happening right now. Then why don't I experience it? Because you don't look. What should I look for? Nothing. Just look. Look at what? At anything your eyes light on. But must I look in a special way? No, the ordinary way will do. But don't I always look the ordinary way? No, you don't. But why not? Because to look, you must be here, and you are mostly somewhere else. You're mostly somewhere else. How many times when you're raising your kids, are you so busy with all the things that have to be done time-wise in sequence or whatever, that you stop to? And some of you have done this. You may have seen your kids out playing and you're standing at the kitchen window. You have a lot to get done, but you look out the window and you see them and you go, I wish I could carve this in my brain forever. You've probably had those moments when you look at something and you say, that is my daughter that I will always remember. That's how I will remember my mother. Or you have somebody that's close to you that's dying. And it's a simple thing like a hand touching. Those things they can touch you, but you have to take the time to be there. If you're too worried about, oh no, this person's dying, and I need to get this done and this done and this done and this done, and what do I say? And you're worried about all those things, you're missing that moment. And that's leaning toward more the Kairos kind of thing that we're going to talk about. Questions, comments, or anything so far? No? Okay. I had a list of things here that went along with that I'll touch on some of them. The moments when we encounter God and find purpose. I don't know whether you've had any moments like that. The moments we remember long after they have passed because they define our lives. I know probably for Kelly and I, the military has moments like that I'm going to confess. Nora laughs at me frequently for a variety of different things.
Yes.
But I iron. I don't like wrinkled stuff. All this stuff where you buy a t-shirt and just put it on and it's wrinkled. I'd walk outside and go, people are staring at me. I'm not doing this. It has to be ironed. And there are other things like that that I've learned from the military. I want my shoes shine. I look at people and say, and I automatically judge them. So if you don't have shine shoes on, just know I'm judging you. In my own way, I'm kidding. But we have those kind of things that we got from the military, that orderliness that conflicts with Nora and her disorderliness. So conversations that warm your heart. A moment when you finally understand something. And I don't mean understand a math problem or understand, but the moment when you finally maybe understand why a person is acting the way they are, or what caused them to be that way. Those kind of moments where you say, because I had this conversation with you, I now understand you. I am on the same wavelength as you. And it creates a different relationship. And it's one of those special moments in your life that you always remember. Here's a quote from a philosopher, Hippocrates, and he says, every Kairos is a Chronos, but not every Chronos is a Kairos. So we can have a moment in time when Jesus died and was on the cross and he was buried, resurrected. That was a God Kairos time. It was the start of an era. It was the start of a thing, a time that was not like any other time prior. It was new, it was different, it was God-given. That Kairos is better translated as the right time or God's time. And there's a right time for everything. This is where we're going to start looking into a lot of scripture. We tend to look at things, stories, and events in the Bible, and we want to put a time on it. In fact, do any of you know of or have a chronological Bible? You've heard of them. You have one? They take the Bible and it reads differently than other Bibles because it's put in what's perceived to be chronological time. And we tend to do the same thing. Well, this means this because Paul was alive at this time and this emperor did this at this time. And then we start getting into discrepancies and saying, yeah, but he died in this time. And Paul was saying this about, and we have all these discussions religiously about Chronos time things, and we're missing the Kairos time moments that are in the Bible. Let's look at Luke chapter 1, verse 20. There's a story there. And most of you could probably tell me the story. It's about a man named Zechariah, and he had a wife. What's her name? Elizabeth. Wants to tell me the rest of the story. What happened?
They were old.
Not sure.
They were old and they couldn't have children. Okay. But she did.
Her time had passed.
No, actually her.
No, it was not, but it seemed like it.
It seemed like it was.
An angel appeared to Zechariah.
Yeah, and he said, and now, because Zechariah was getting, I don't want to say sassy, but he was saying,
Oh, yeah, he questioned.
he questioned it. He said, and now you will be silent and not be able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their Kairos time. There's a point for that birth, and we know that, but it wasn't talking about May 21st or whatever month and day he was born, but it was talking about this is a special event. This event in God's view has significance. Let's look at another one. In Mark chapter 1. After John was put in prison, we're told that that's when Jesus went into Galilee proclaiming the gospel. And in verse 15, what does it say?
The time has come.
Right. The Kairos time. It's a time for me as the Son of God to be there, to do this thing. And he says, the kingdom of God has come near. Repent and believe the good news. So the time is Kairos. It's not just any time, it's God's time. Let's look at the next one, Ephesians 5:15 and 16. Somebody want to read that?
So then be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil.
Okay. You think it's talking about just time there? Like you got an hour in a day, or be careful of how you budget your time. Be careful of, it's really talking about a Kairos time. This is a time in your life that you need to be aware of, because the days are evil. And it's not, how do you budget your time? How do you mete out all the minutes and seconds? It's how you live your time. In John 7:6, Jesus points out the difference in this when he says, the right time for me has not yet come. Kairos time. But if you look, it's in John 7, verse 6 through 8. He says, the right time for me has not yet come. The Kairos time hasn't come. But for you, any time is right. And that time is Chronos time. Because they're saying, we want something to happen. Today's as good a day as any. And to them, the time is day or hour. But Jesus is saying that's not the time. You'll take any time. God has a specific time. I'm a lousy typist generally, and I type on here the marriage of Cana, and it should be the marriage at Cana. So what happened at the marriage at Cana? Those of you watched The Chosen in the auditorium ought to remember that.
Turn water to wine.
He turned water into wine.
First miracle. That was his
But
first.
why did he do that?
His mother's
His
request.
mama asked him to.
His mama asked him to. In fact, she more than asked, she kind of almost forced him
Yeah,
to
do
do
what
it.
he tells you to.
Right. But here's what is said there. In John chapter 2, we can start at the first verse, I guess. Anybody want to read that? John 2, 1 through 4.
And the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and the disciples had also been involved in the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come."
So he's talking about his time not come, my hour. Mine says my hour has not come. And again, it's another Kairos thing. And there are many, many references about Kairos. Paul writes to the church at Ephesus. Let's turn to Ephesians 1, looking at verses 7 through 10. By the way, I'm not going to go through all 60 of those. I'm just pulling out some of the better ones. So in Ephesians 1, 7 through 10, Paul writes to the Ephesians, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace, which he lavished upon us, in all wisdom and insight, making known to us the mystery of his will, according to his purpose, which he set forth in Christ as a plan for the fullness of time, to unite all things in him, things in heaven and things on earth." And again, this time reference is Kairos time. And so and it's kind of ironic, the early man who used the word ion, the Greeks, who saw, they didn't have clocks, they didn't have anything other than what they saw naturally. They knew that there was something before themselves and there was going to be something after themselves. And they had that long period of time, and they weren't looking at it as Chronos time. They weren't counting the seconds and the minutes. They were looking at ages and eons, because they had stories, they had myths. They're the people that they had storytellers that were brought up that would tell stories and things from many, many generations past. And those stories carried on. And they knew that there was a longer time period than just what they were experiencing when the sun up, sundown time. We know that these some of these periods seem to overlap, and there could be an argument or a confusion about that. But stop and think about it, if you really do, for a minute. Our whole basis, our whole belief of the redemption story of man starts when? Genesis. Starts at the very beginning. And that was, if you read the Bible, if you study the Bible, and even if it is chronologically in order, when you get done with the Bible, you asked me before class, was I a grammar person or a literature person? And I said I was a literature person. And Kyle said, "I don't know how you do that. If I had to look for all those things in literature, I'd never get the story read." Well, yes, you might start reading the Bible and get caught up in all the things in it and not get the total picture. But if you spend much time in the Bible, you're gonna see or understand that what God is doing now in this Kairos time is something that he had planned from the beginning. And I'm here to tell you, if you've ever been in a Lutheran or Catholic church, they indoctrinate you from the time you have to go through a catechism class and all kinds of stuff. And you have to be able to recite all these things. And I walked out of all those classes after reciting all kinds of creeds and all kinds of information. And I knew less about the Bible than people walking down the street. I mean, it was just memorizing some stuff that they wanted me to memorize. I don't know if you'll admit it. How many of you felt comfortable with your knowledge about the Bible when you were baptized? You thought you did. I know Jesus died. I know, and you got that. But did you? None of us under, and I was 21 and I'm including myself in that. When I was baptized, when I was 20, actually, when I was baptized when I was 20, I still didn't understand all that stuff. I don't care. They made me sit through that Jewel Miller film strip. and I walked out of there. I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't understand all. And even now, that's why I like teaching, because I look into things and I say, aha. And I'll go to Nora and say things and she'll say, I don't care. But I'm excited. To me, it's a new thing. And so, you know, those aha moments, those things where we learn are part of that Kairos thing. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And again, do I have a reader? Just read down through from 1 to 11.
For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 of them died. We should not test Christ as some of them did and were killed by snakes. And do not grumble as some of them did and were killed by the destroying angel. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come.
Again, a Kairos moment. You see what he did there? He was saying, this event happened here, this event happened here, this event, and this event. He was listing events. But what did he do with all those events? He tied them all into
The ages to
Christ.
come.
Christ. They're all example. He mentioned Christ in there. What, verse 10?
At 9.
9. He was tying all this together into one example, one block. He wasn't telling them, here's a story that happened on this day, here's a story on this day. He was trying to say, I'm telling you that all these things happened at a particular time, a Kairos time, because it was all part of God's plan. And he tied Christ into it so they could see that this wasn't just a bunch of stuff happened to a bunch of old people a long time ago. It has significance to them now for this age that they're in because of the time that's coming. Does that make sense? And we tend to not look at things like that. We probably, all of you probably read those verses and said, yeah, I remember the cloud, I remember the snakes, I remember all the stories that you've been told, but you didn't realize what Paul was doing for those people. And they probably didn't even either, because they knew those stories as well, probably. And if they didn't know, they would probably ask. But he's saying, You can know about this, but you don't know about it until you understand the whole story about Christ and the significance of those things as far as he's concerned in the scheme of things, the plan, the redemption. Does that make sense? Am I wrong? Have you ever read that and just said, well, that's nice that he was telling us things to him, but he's trying to make a point. And I know as a teacher, lots of times I may give examples and I'll try and make a point about a whole general topic. Like, I hate to say verbs because you'll think I'm a grammar nut or something. If I'm talking about symbolism in the story, I may mention different examples of symbolism, but they don't understand the significance of putting all that together to make a point in the novel, that kind of thing. So, in Luke 12:42, Jesus says the Father will reward his faithful servants at the proper time. And again, at Kairos time. Now, he goes on to say, and I'll read this. As he rides the donkey into Jerusalem, and it's less than a week before his crucifixion, he weeps and he's lamenting, he's sorrowful over what he knows is going to happen. Now, you know this. After Jesus tells them something's going to happen, and 70 years later it happens. What was that? Temple fell, and all the killing and all the things that happened to the Jewish people when that happened. It wasn't just that the temple fell and they went, oh, we can go another one. They were killed. There was carnage when that happened. But he said, they will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. The Kairos. God came to them and they didn't recognize it. And now, the point probably here for our lesson, I'm going to hit myself a little, is do you recognize the Kairos moments? What does it usually take us to recognize the Kairos moments?
Hindsight. Hindsight.
Hindsight. Because why? Go back to that wise man and that other person. We're so busy with all the stuff that we don't see. We're busy in the events, the time, and all the stuff that's happening, that we don't see what's happening. And so we don't see God working in our lives. It's only when we look back at it and say, you know, God did this when. And we can say things. I hate to keep using my experiences. Maybe one of you will open it up. But Nora had a tubal pregnancy. She was bleeding to death, and I had to take her to the hospital. We had been married, I don't know how many years, when we got to Lubbock, 82, 68 to 82, I mean, 12.
I don't know. Don't make me do math at this time. About, wasn't it like 81, 82? Because
82.
Yeah. You were pregnant with Abby, right?
And you already had Jonathan and Kelsey, but I stood at a window looking out into the dark sky, waiting for Dr. Preston Deshawn, who used to go here, to come out and tell me whether she was alive or not alive. I'm telling you, I was looking at that God moment. I was present. And we have those times when we're forced to say, what's happening? How is this going to affect my life? Am I going to be, or am I not going to be such a way? Those are those Kairos moments. Right? I know most of you weren't missionaries. You weren't a missionary. Nobody missionary in here? How many of you can imagine one day when you say, my husband or my wife just said they felt the call and we need to go on a mission field to wherever. I know what Nora would say. He's hearing
Call
things.
me at least once a week.
Bye.
I'd say we've had a good run. So just call me when you get there.
But can you imagine? And those people, they're in tune with their relationship with God. They are in tune. I admire them because they're either hearing things or if they really are called by God to do that. I don't know if I would hear it if he called me to do that. Maybe because I don't think I'd want to do that. But those Kairos moments are there. I'm going to run out of time. I'll just tell you about this. Mark 1:14 and 15. He's talking about a time that's fulfilled. This is a time that is now fulfilled. It happened beginning to end is the time that he's talking about. In Luke 12:54 through 56, it talks about the present time, and that requires an interpretation and a response in faith. So it's, yes, I have faith, but I have to interpret what's going on here, and I have to respond to it.
And Bill, I think that scripture is a good one because it says when you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say it's going to rain, and it does. And when the south wind blows, you say it's going to be hot, and it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it that you don't know how to interpret this present time?
And that's right. And I don't even want to get into the current socio-political environment in America, but what do we see about this present time, and how are we responding to it? Those are, like you said, we're adept at looking at the obvious things, but we have to also interpret what's going on in God's plan for things. And then in Colossians and Ephesians, those two refer to making the most of your time or making the most of your opportunity. And that doesn't necessarily mean you got an hour on Sunday, make the most of it, that kind of thing. It's, you do have time here on this earth. What are you doing with it? How are you spending your chronological time? How are you spending your time on earth? And it's a Kairos thing on both of these. Okay.
And I think lots of times in my life, I have what I have said is a divine appointment, as Laura said, in hindsight, because at that time, I thought it's an interruption of my time. But in hindsight, I look back and go, that was a divine appointment. And I think we have to get used to the presence of God in our life every day, every hour, every minute, to recognize those times and not always look back in hindsight to see them, but make the most of them when they happen.
Nora, that's exactly what I was sitting over here thinking. How awesome it'd be to be in the time, God's time, knowing that He has this all taken care of for us. And that that our time is for love for others, the commitment to do things, even though we might have other scheduled moments that we have to do. But to live a life knowing that God has the time in here. I always thought it was a cliche when I was growing up that they say, well, it's God's timing. I'm like, please, you know what you're talking about. It's a good time. What are you talking about? And it's true that whoever was saying that had a little bit of wisdom, thinking it is His time. He's established time and He's established eternity. So why would I want to mess with it, but be a part of it? So I think there's a difference. It's that I'm sitting in the stands watching, or I'm in it and being a part of it and being allowed Him to work through me to be the steps I need to, the voice I need to be, the loving person I need. Thanks, Nora. That's exactly what I was thinking.
One last thing, just to let you know, and if you want to, you can turn to Matthew chapter 8. And it's a story when two possessed men were encountered by Jesus. And we're not going to go through the whole story, but if you get down to verse 29, the demons, this is the demons that were inside the men, said, "What do you want with us, Son of God?" They shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" And that wasn't like 8 o'clock. Hey, come on. You were supposed to come here at 8, at 7. I mean, give us another hour with this guy. It's not it. They know the appointed time. They were talking Kairos. And if the demons talk Kairos, then we should be more cognizant of it and take into consideration. It's not used more times in the Bible than the other word, just because. So I worried about this because we're talking about time. When I first talked to Nora, she went, "I don't understand any of this." So I hope you don't walk out and say, "What were they saying?" I hope you got it. So go out and be Kairos cognizant this week.
You know what I kept thinking about with time is Ecclesiastes 3.
Yeah.
There's a time for everything under heaven. Of course, I thought Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, yeah.
For young people who don't know them. But anyway, that's what I thought of. There's time to read, there's time to sow, there's time. And I'm thinking that it's Kairos time because it's
Yeah.
a season of your life. There's a time to do all these things in your life. And maybe there's a time to think about that and not about many other things. To be present.
And that may be something that we can get into. We could have gotten into. I know it's past 8 o'clock. It's 8:01.4. If you're your age, your focus on the Kairos aspects of it are going to be different than us. And more than likely, we're looking at it and saying, "Boy, did I blow that." I'm getting ready to pass on.
Finish the race.
Did I do what I was supposed to do? Was I aware enough as I should? Each age, the literal age that we are in, is going to have different opportunities. Every one of your students is probably a God-appointed thing.
That's what you tell yourself every morning, isn't it, Chris?
Some are more testing than others.
And we also have to believe too that sometimes Satan appoints people too.
Yes, he does. He's in there too.
So I'll let you decide. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your